Hey everyone, this is Olga on People of Substance by LemonSkies, and I'm thrilled to introduce Amanda Stanley, my guest today. And before I give you a chance to introduce yourself, you and I were introduced by a mutual friend, and she said to me, here's somebody that you should really talk and, have as a guest. And we really kind of connected immediately in so many different ways, from running to dealing with small children to creativity and the work we're doing. So I am just over the moon to have you on. So please introduce yourself, Amanda.
Hi, everybody. My name is Amanda Stanley, and I think the best way to describe myself right now is that I'm in transition, professionally in particular, from being the CEO of a nonprofit based here in Virginia into the world of self-employment, where I'll be doing some leadership development work with individuals and organizations, mostly around culture and organizational development, but also just how to take really good care of people, both yourself and the people that you work with, in all the work that you do professionally. So I'm dipping my toes in some new water while I leave a place I've been very comfortable and happy in for about 9 years.
So DePaul Community Resources, it's a Virginia-based organization. So can you tell to non-Virginia folks what it does?
Sure. DePaul is a human service organization, and we provide programming in foster care, adoption, mental health, and we also work with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And at the core of everything we do is the idea that children and families and folks all deserve to belong fully in and to their families, and to be safe in those families. And they also deserve to belong in their communities. And so what that looks like every day for us is that we recruit and train and support families and people to care for those who our community has typically overlooked, and not really cared very well for.
You've described it before as, and I actually wrote it down, good old-fashioned social work.
Yeah, it is. It's good old-fashioned social work for sure. Taking good care of people, making sure they have access to what they need, and wrapping around them, even if that looks a little bit untraditional. But the other thing that we've expanded into, particularly in the last 2 or 3 years, is this role as sort of beyond social work and into the work of storytelling, which we think is really critical to our vision, which is hope and belonging. So what that has looked like, as we work in a really complex system that sometimes itself can be a barrier to good care for folks, it has looked like us producing podcasts and publishing books. And most recently, a documentary on the system challenges related to the disability work in Virginia. So the aim of that is to really make sure that we're building a bigger tribe, right, beyond just the good old-fashioned social work folks, so that we've got people in our tribe who actually can help us make a difference, not only at the individual level, but also at the system level, to make hope and belonging really more of a reality for more people than we might have been able to reach on our own.
Well, and I love the, kind of the dissemination of through podcasts, through documentaries, et cetera, because you talk a lot about belonging, and belonging probably starts with understanding. So to an average person who it may not even be a blip on their radar, to kind of draw their attention to the subject.
Mm-hmm. I love that. Belonging begins with understanding.
Yeah, that's my quote for the day.
Yeah, I love that. Keep
I've done my work.
That close.
We'll need to write it down. So, one question that I kind of wonder about, and I don't know enough about the subject, how does Virginia stack against other states in terms of services we offer, in terms of what we do? Like, are we doing pretty okay-ish? Are we middle of the pack? Are we kind of trailing behind? How would you rate us?
Well, there is a rating system, and for the way that we care for individuals with developmental and intellectual disabilities, we typically rank 39th, 40th, so not great.
Room for improvement.
Not great. So we, that in the past historically has been about the number of people with intellectual disabilities who live in institutional settings and not in families. which has resulted in lawsuits against the state from the Department of Justice and resulted in some system changes. More recently, that lower ranking has a little bit more to do with lack of access to community-based care. In the foster care world, Virginia does not rank very highly, particularly for teenagers who age out of the system. We are usually about 48th, 49th in the country in terms of outcomes for children who leave the foster care system without permanency, which is another way of saying without a family who has legally become kind of their forever people. So we have a lot of work to do in this system. And what's particularly frustrating about that, I think for those of us who work in the nonprofit world, is Virginia is often ranked a top 5, top 10 state for business. So we have resources, right? We have the capacity to do better. There's a lot of work to do.
So you spent almost 10 years at DePaul, and until just literally a few days ago.
I'm still grieving.
I feel like it's going to be with you, always. What is one or a couple things that you're most proud of in your time there?
I think the thing that probably I'm most proud of and that holds all the things I'm really proud of is the culture that we built, which we talked to the staff about, like it's dirt, right? Culture is just like the soil that stuff grows from. And when it's really healthy, right? And that means when our workplace relationships are healthy, our roles are well-defined, our capacity to hold conflict is there. We're living out our values. And when we don't, we call it out and we have a conversation about it. All the nitty-gritty stuff, our language that we use with each other, the culture is what everything else comes from, right? So our that has been developed just beautifully over time. And part of, I think, what helped me feel ready to go was that dirt was solid and really good things were growing from it, like with or without me being in the room, which was this great thing. And leadership was being practiced at all levels. It wasn't reserved for people with a C in front of their name. People are collaborating, challenging each other is the norm. And from that kind of dirt, from that kind of culture has grown a lot of really great projects that I'm proud of, including what we call the DePaul Garage, which is kind of this innovation space in the social sector to help solve some of these old problems with some new stuff, some new solutions. I am really proud of our storytelling work. So yeah, I'm really proud of, I guess, the container, the soil that we were able to build and cultivate that has made so many really fantastic things happen programmatically and from a leadership perspective.
So what you just described about culture and kind of developing that understanding and how people relate to one another, that actually seems like a very logical transition to your new venture, the Artisan Leader, which I'll ask you about in just a minute. But I guess at which point, how hard was it to make this decision to leave a place that you clearly feel really, really good and strong about, and to kind of venture on this new journey?
It's so funny. We were at a reception Monday night, and my mom came with me as my guest, and that was risky because she started telling stories about me when I was a teenager to people that I've worked with, for 9 years and had some respect for me. But one of the things she said to somebody was, she calls me Mandy. Mandy is an emotional person, and she does not make decisions with her emotions, right? So, and when I told my team that I was leaving, I said to them, my decision-making process really kind of starts in my gut and moves up.
Yep.
I have this almost just intuition that something is moving. And then I start to have lots of feelings about that. And then I start to really think through, why does this make sense? How does this make sense? How can I make this work? And how can I take care of kind of all the parts and pieces of it? And once I get clear on all those levels, then it really is like you have fallen over a cliff and you cannot not make the decision. Like,
right.
And that's really scary. and you have to start talking to people. And there were definitely some moments in the process where I had that kind of, oh shit, I cuss on your podcast.
Yeah, you can.
That, oh shit moment. Like, what have I done? I've already given them my letter and I'm not sure. And I can't crawl back up. Like I've got to keep going. But for me, the decision was not. I feel this, there we go, this sense of calling to something new.
So I want to ask you about your new venture. So you kind of jumped off the cliff, if you will, from your position at DePaul, and you already announced the Artisan Leader, which makes a lot of sense to me, leadership development and bringing in creativity and care and nurturing into organizational culture. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, this all started in a moment in the foyer of my coach's office, and my executive coach said to me, we had just had a conversation about my college days and how much time I spent in the art studio in college. And she asked, what would happen if you made artist, that role as an artist, as central to your professional life instead of as this thing on the side you maybe did sometimes as a hobby? And I left that conversation. I bought a notebook and I went home and I filled it with the answer to that question. And what was born in me was this idea that this thing I love, which is developing people and developing workplace cultures, it really is in many ways more of an art than a particular set of technical skills. And started to dream about what I could make and what I could offer the world, and got both excited about what impact that might have and about how much fun that would be for me. Right.
Mm-hmm. So what does it look like? Is there actual, like, do you get paints and crayons, or is it more philosophical?
Both. Right. So in my coaching relationships with people, this is a lens that we put on, which is that you as the CEO or the VP or whatever role they have, are facing a challenge that is new, that nobody's faced before with these people at this time, with this particular context. And so while there might be really useful models you have for dealing with conflict or strategy, you have to design what you're going to do next in a way that makes sense for your people and is true to your values, et cetera, et cetera. And that takes a creative part of you that nobody else can conjure up for you. So much of what we do in the coaching relationship is work with presence and pulling out kind of the creator in them, which is not something most executives are used to doing. So it's a pretty uncomfortable space. In retreat settings or consultative settings, yeah, we actually do sometimes pull out the art stuff, right? So I'll do workshops with groups where we will do creative writing, or we will do a little bit of sculpture, or we'll do a little bit of doodling, to help kind of clear the cobwebs out and get them a little bit more familiar with the part of them that can imagine things and that can make things. And honestly, that can put something out in the world and say, look what I made. What do you think? Because so much of leadership is that vulnerable, right? It's doing something, making something, deciding something, and then it's in front of the world. And there's this gaspy breath holding moment, like, I don't know if this is good enough, right? And art has a way of kind of getting at that part of us and bringing out the same kind of courage we need to lead, but in a way that's has a little more levity to it, I think, for people.
So it really got me thinking, listening to you now, and just it's sort of about imagining something that there's not a playbook for.
That's right.
Otherwise, you're just managing and executing, but to really lead, you need to kind of think beyond. And, when you're staring at a blank piece of paper, you have to, or a lump of clay, you need to imagine what it could be.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's what leadership is, right? It's making something new. It's taking people a place they've never been. And nobody's going to give you instructions.
Right. It's not color by number. What did you do? I've been dying to ask you, for art studio, what was your specialty?
Printmaking.
Printmaking.
So it's probably one of the lesser known, items on the college list of classes you can take. And the kind of printmaking I did was very old school, like Rembrandt-esque, like it was called intaglio, which is this mechanical and chemical way of making an impression on a thin copper plate, inking the plate, wiping the plate, and running that plate with some paper through a giant, old, beautiful press, and making this image. And yeah, it was really technical, and really my printmaking teacher would say persnickety. It's a very persnickety medium. But I loved it partly because you could pull a print at any point in the process, right? When you paint a picture, the painting is finished and you have that painting. Right. That's all you have. When you print, you can pull a proof every day and see the progress you've made. And the final print is like not the only evidence you have. So you have all this evidence of process, which is, I don't love process. I really prefer final products, but it's like this reminder of all the stuff you went through to get there. It's pretty cool.
I think I'd have a hard time with, once if you burn a line into that copper plate that's off, like there's no erasing it.
There's a great tool called a burnisher. And it's like a little round edge, and copper is very soft.
Yeah.
So if you make a mark in it, you can
buff it out
over. Now, most of the time.
So while it's on this side of me, it's by no means Rembrandt, but that piece behind me, the red one, is actually one of the prints I made. Not the heart, the little guy.
I love that you know printmaking, because not everybody knows what you're talking
about. That one is like linoleum, but watercolor is kind of more my medium of choice these days, because oil was just too challenging. I tried it like for a class, and it was just too hard. It was a lot of mixing turpentine into paints and, lean, fat over lean and all of that kind of thing.
It's so much harder than it looks. My kids go to art galleries and they're like, I could do that. And then they try to draw like a goat and it goes very poorly. And it's like, there's technique to this, and it's a lot harder than it looks, right?
Yeah. And to your point, kind of the process is, it's not just the finished product, but it's sort of, just sitting there with a paintbrush and usually having an audio book on and kind of removing yourself from things day to day. So,
yeah.
I want to ask you, so you've been an executive, you have kiddos, you have all sorts of things going on like many of us. How do you care for yourself?
Oh, better at sometimes than others. I am learning that self-care is a lot like treating yourself like you treated your baby when they were an infant, which means you are very tuned in to what they need. Babies are kind of easier than I am, right? Because they're either hungry, hurt, or dirty. There's a very small menu of options.
Process of elimination.
But when your baby is hungry, you give the baby food. When your baby is tired, you let the baby sleep. And there's this, I'm learning that self-care is really the hardest part of it, is just tuning into what's going on right now. What do I need right now? And, oh, this is tired. I think we get so out of time. It took me like a visit to my doctor to realize I was tired. So I'm like, there's all this blah, 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 blah. And he said, I think you just need to take a nap. I was like, no, no, Amanda, you're tired. And when you're tired, you need to take a nap. I had forgotten to recognize what it looked like to be tired in the middle of a day. Right. And had to be retaught that. So now, for me, self-care it's not necessarily going for a walk or taking the bath or taking the nap. It's actually the thing that happens before that, which is I recognize that I have limits. I notice them when they come up. I honor them, and I do something about it, whatever that is. And it's something I've had to relearn because I lost it. And I think I lost more of it during the pandemic. I just raced through and I forgot that I might have needed, a sandwich sometimes, or a nap or whatever.
Yeah. I remember first time you and I were chatting, you're like, I nap. And I was like nap? like sleep. Yep.
Like every day.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I started during the pandemic, actually, after that doctor visit. He said, just, because I used to have some rest built into my days in other ways, and I didn't have it anymore. So he said, just try it, like a couple of days, just lay down for 20 minutes at like 3:00. And I did, and I can lay down and wake up in 20 minutes and have energy back. And I thought, well, he was right. I argued with him pretty aggressively there for that entire visit, but he was right. So I found a way, particularly on the days I was working from home, to shut it all down and lay down for 20 minutes.
Like a little siesta.
A little CEO siesta. Yeah. It's a thing.
So that should be like a thing.
I want to make it popular. Can we make that popular for people?
We can try, although I am not partaking, because once I'm asleep, it's going to be hours and hours. 20 minutes is not happening for me. It's going to be like 2+ hours easily.
Yeah.
Well, so just to wrap it up, I thought we would do something kind of fun here, and we're going to keep it professional and PG, not like the college version of it. Okay. But we're going to play Two Truth and a Lie. So what are some truth for you, professionally speaking, and something, the more outlandish, the better. And I feel like you've got things up your sleeve.
I don't have a lot of outlandish.
So
are you playing two, or just my two truths and a lie?
Yours, because I know mine. Because I know what
fair game. Okay.
You can ask me later.
And you want them out of order so that I'm tricking you?
It doesn't matter. Surprise me.
All right.
It's like a game of cups on Princess Bride,
Okay. So first, I'll start with, I handwrite everything first. First thing every morning, I get up and I run before the sun comes up. I missed my 45-minute commute when COVID started.
So I feel like writing part has to be truth, because you talked about the notebook. So that was a hint. That was a giveaway. So that one is true.
That's right.
The commuting and running. So I know you do run, but I bet it's not every day. I'm going to guess it's just not every day. So I'm going to say running is the lie.
It's true. Yeah. You've gotten to know me well in a very short time. Yeah. I do not run every day. And my husband gets up every day before the sun. And I've started to say to him, I think we should let the sun go first. Yeah. I just think the sun should go first. So yeah. So
that was successful. And
nice job, Olga. I'm impressed.
Thank you. Well, thank you for coming. And maybe as you're progressing with what you're doing, I would love to kind of come back, and maybe we can do even like a little art project.
That would be fantastic.
That would be fun, right? Like that will be a completely separate special thing, and we'll bring our colors and crayons and pencils and
the LemonSkies special edition.
Yes, like a little art.
Bring your sketchbook.
Bring your sketchbook. I like it.
I'm game.
All right. Well, thank you for coming.
Thanks, Olga, for having me.